Tune into stockcharts.com TV on Thursday afternoon. I'm going to be doing a guest spot. Looking forward to being semi-regular there. So anyway, if you get the chance, tune in. This channel is for educational purposes only. Make sure you do your own due diligence before making any investments. And there is inherent risk in trading, so it's speculative. Just make sure you keep that in mind. Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro. Going to talk today about MACD again. I am going to talk about it in multiple time frames, and I'm going to discuss, I think, really one of my favorite combinations that I look for on a regular basis, and it has been happening a lot over the course of the last few months. So I want to give a few different examples. It can take place in it has a few different looks to it. So I think it's just, it's good to be aware of how to use MACD in two different time frames and two consecutive time frames. And let's go to the first example. I'm going to try and show you a couple of different patterns that in the way that it evolves. So this first one is AME. I've got a weekly chart on the left and a daily chart on the right. And so the combination, again, from my book, Invest Like a Pro, I talk about 3 or 4 different MACD patterns that I really like to look for. And so on a higher time frame, the pinch play is very useful in knowing that there's a pullback in an ongoing trend or a pullback in a trend that looks like it could be reversing. And that's typically what the pinch play is showing. And then on the lower time frame, we're going to look for the zero line reversal. So I know the zero line pattern is a very, very powerful pattern all by itself, but if you can combine it with what I'm going to show you on the higher time frame, I think your odds of success are better. I think the odds that you make, bigger gains, you see a little bit stronger moves take place, really increase. So again, I've got the arrows pointing out where I'm looking. So the first thing we're trying to find are stocks that have they've crossed usually both moving averages, but definitely the 18 on the higher time frame, in this case, a weekly chart. I'm going to use just a weekly and daily. Obviously, this happens in all different time frames, so just be aware of that. But on the higher time frame of the weekly, we make a strong move to the upside and then we pull back. The pinch play is where you cross over to the you do a crossover of the signal line, and then the MACD, sometimes it pulls back to them. It actually turns down and touches or works down to the signal line, and other times it just hesitates and pauses while the signal line keeps rising. And that's the case right here. And this will happen quite often when it's taking place below the zero line. So you get these pinch plays that develop inside of the range where you have not had a change in trend yet. And that's crystal clear when you look at it on the price pattern. You had a down move and then an up move, but really you're inside this range of price support and price resistance. This can still be a very powerful pattern to look for and use. So you get this crossover pattern, then you get the pullback. Now, most of the time I'm looking for 2 lower highs on this time frame to make sure that we've gotten a pullback. In this case, that happened. We had a lower high here and a lower high here. In fact, we had a third lower high that was an inside bar. And so once I see that in this time frame, I'm going to go to the lower time frame and look for an entry pattern. So if we zero in on, let's just say where we had our second lower high right here, I'm going to start looking right in that gray area right in here. And if you notice, we're below a declining 18. The MACD line is still working its way down towards zero. There really isn't a signal yet. And so the key thing that I think is important to recognize is most of the time you're going to get that opposing trend pattern on the price chart and the moving averages where the 18 crosses down below the 40 as the MACD is coming back to the zero line. But there are times where it'll be a little bit more aggressive, and I'm going to show you an example of that where the turn is a lot quicker. In this case, you really could use a downtrend line break like this, or a more conservative downtrend line would be using that type of a break. Your third option, and where I have the green arrow, is where the MACD is crossing back above the zero line. I'm sorry, crossing back above the signal line, and you're holding the zero line. So you've got a really good combination on a daily chart or the lower time frame, and you know you have the support of the the pinch play developing on the higher time frame. So if we go forward, we move forward, we had a nice move, and then actually the exact same pattern develops again. We get this time the MACD on this pullback here actually pulls back and pinches down towards the signal line, and the signal line is still showing nice strength. And then if we go to the lower time frame, we still get the 18 crossing down below the 40. MACD is basically hanging right in this zero line area, and then we get the crossover on this big green bar. One thing I want to note, to be of note, is if you notice the two crossovers to the upside where the MACD line crosses above the signal line both take place on a big green bar. Both of those patterns right there. And so I always want you to be on the lookout for the price action, confirming what we're seeing in the moving averages and confirming what we're seeing in the indicators. Let's go to triple B and a Y. This is Bed Bath & Beyond. And again, we get two examples. First, this is an undercut. If you notice where you took out these lows here from late last year, undercut and then rally. And then when you pulled back, you get the same type of pinch play develop where the MACD doesn't exactly pull back to the signal line, but we got a lot of good momentum from the signal line, and this sort of hesitates while this is pulling back. We do get our two lower highs, lower high here, lower high here, and on that second lower high, again, we're going down to the lower time frame, and we're looking for a reversal pattern. Now, in this case, and in fact, both of these arrows show, and I actually use this example in my book too. There are two different types of entry patterns on the lower time frame. One where the two moving averages come together, but they don't cross over. And that's really what's taking place on these two signals. So I want you to be aware of that. It's not always going to be that picture perfect opposing trend trigger. And so the way you can clarify that is to watch for the signal line cross, which took place here. And so if you get a zero line hold, and then the MACD crosses above this signal line, then you can go ahead and take that trade if you're meeting the criteria on the higher time frame. One thing I wanted to point out, the second time was a little sloppy, and we made a lower, we closed lower a couple different times, but we didn't make two lower highs. I'm still okay with that if it's a zero line cross, meaning this is the first time we're getting a little dip or pullback after both of these lines have crossed above the zero line. And so you can be, a little bit more conservative with these if you don't want to take this trade because it didn't have the nice orderly two lower high pattern on the higher time frame. But I would tend to lean towards looking what's taking place around the zero line. If you get a good pattern around the zero line, and I'm willing to go down to the lower time frame. Again, in this case, this signal didn't have that big green bar. It had a nice green bar crossing above. In fact, it had a nice green bar here, and then a second nice green bar here, on this bar, and you cross above the 18, and then we got the cross of the signal line. So I think that qualifies as a buy signal. The second one was much more meaningful to me, and the reason is even though you didn't come down and touch the zero line, it was so strong that it couldn't even pull back to the zero line. But look at the day where the zero line crossed back over. You broke to new highs and you had a monster green bar to the upside. So that's, again, confirming price action. When you get confirming price action, then your confidence level should go way up. I want to give you one last example. And this is Nike, and again, it's the same pattern. We have a strong move to the upside, and then you pull back, and you get the little sort of pinch. It's a little bit more of a modest pinch because the MACD doesn't actually pull down towards the signal line, but it's still pretty obvious to me that this is a pinch play. We had a couple of bars of lower highs take place, and you could have argued, because if we go down to the lower time frame where you start to see this pulling back, you could have drawn in a trend line, and because we had not broken the 0 line here, taken this on this bar right here, either on this day or on this day, as it's breaking above the trend line. But if you waited, now you would have done that and you would have put in a stop underneath this low and you would have been totally fine. You would have just had to wait to get paid because it would have pulled back against you and then finally kicked in. If you waited for the MACD to actually cross over the signal line right at the 0 line there and look at the size of this green bar right here, then you got the confirmation of kind of everything what we're looking at. You get the pinch play on the higher time frame, a nice orderly pullback, and notice how this was such an orderly consolidation on the lower time frame. It just walked its way sideways right towards 0, and then you get the big green bar kicking off the move to the upside. So this is a very attractive combination. I would suggest that you go back through some charts. There are hundreds of examples of this taking place over the course of really over the last few months, and even ones that are taking place right now. But I thought these were really good examples to give you different criteria as a potential trigger. So I hope this was helpful. Please hit that like button, and we'll talk to you soon.